Well, you can all cancel your HBO Max subscriptions now because it's been made official. It turns out that House of the Dragon is just as homophobic as Game of Thrones. Let's discuss. Before I get started, I'd like to kindly ask that you hit the like button and please subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
House of the Dragon, a show that I've actually been enjoying for once. But it always seems like outside forces are consistently trying to ruin that enjoyment. And of course it's being done with more petty bullshit. I'm not even sure that I'm going to continue to review this show. I might just watch it for myself. Because let's be honest, nobody wants to hear a YouTuber talk positively about anything. But one thing I will not ignore is loser media hacks creating problems where they do not exist. This article comes from Tracy Brown at the Los Angeles Times, who honestly looks like someone who would write an article like this.
What the hell am I looking at?
And she starts off her magnum opus with this line. House of the Dragon has made it abundantly clear that Westeros is not the most progressive place. Now I know this person probably just started watching Game of Thrones yesterday, but FYI, it's pretty much always been that way. She goes on to say that its deep patriarchal traditions means that even the realm's most powerful woman, Princess Rhaenyra, cannot escape the duty to marry and eventually bear children. Yes, being faithful to the source material is a real bitch, isn't it?
Let's gut the freaking nerd.
She goes on to say that House of the Dragon follows Game of Thrones' tradition of failing its LGBTQ characters. And all of this is based on how Laenor's sexuality is treated in this episode, as well as how his gay lover is beaten brutally to death. So even though many characters have experienced unspeakable deaths on this show, when it happens to an LGBTQ character, apparently that means it's homophobic.
That makes sense.
Remember when people were calling Michael Myers homophobic because he killed 2 gay guys in Halloween Kills? Same energy here. First off, and most importantly, this is a very important detail that this person is missing. That detail being, it's fucking fiction, you moron. Beyond that, let's analyze for a second what House of the Dragons has done preemptively to avoid this type of criticism this season. They already made the show significantly more diverse, in spite of what that might mean for the story moving forward.
Always bet on black.
And again, this is something that I didn't even necessarily have a problem with. The show has also made Rhaenyra challenge those patriarchal norms every chance that she can get. And I think she generally had the audience on her side in doing so. And yet, surprise, surprise, people still found a reason to be upset about something. The moral of this story is stop trying to appease people who are only worried about checking boxes and not worrying about seeing a good story told.
If people don't like it if you're being yourself, fuck them!
Imagine watching Game of Thrones and this is where your mind goes. The truth, ladies and gentlemen, is that representation isn't enough. Because it's never been about putting all these different groups on an even playing field. Because now every group represented also needs their representing character to receive special story privileges to protect their feelings. It is simply unacceptable that a gay man in Westeros would suffer a similar fate that a lot of other characters have suffered in Westeros.
All I can tell you, sir, is that he's gay.
Because that might send the wrong message, right? So what we're going to have to do is give all future LGBTQ characters in Game of Thrones literal plot armor that makes it impossible for anyone to ever harm them. And that's how we're going to solve the very real bigotry going on in the world. That starts with making sure fictional characters do not have their face beaten in. It's very clear to me that these critics and media types do not have a fucking clue about how to write compelling television or characters.
What an idiot! Oh, what a loser!
And they prove it every single time they share one of their dipshit opinions. Because as always, they can only see things from their own narrow-minded perspective. This is why fictional fantasy worlds need to reflect their vision of the real world, because they need validation. And because they lack any kind of creativity or imagination. Are there homophobic characters and ideas in Game of Thrones? Absolutely. But again, it's representative of how this world was built by its creator. So because of that, it should not be held against the show in any way.
Then why the fuck didn't you say so?
Why is it that every time someone goes in and plays in someone else's established sandbox, they feel the need to change everything just to protect their own personal feelings? It's probably because they're weak-minded, soft individuals who are incapable of separating fiction and reality. And then when people like myself complain about these unwarranted changes because we like this thing the way it is, that's when we're labeled bigots and toxic.
Fuck me, right?
It's the never-ending cycle of ruining beloved franchises. Why some people can't just watch a fucking show and take it at face value, I'll never understand. But I do think it has a lot to do with how these stories are created and now presented to us. I think it's negatively impacted the audience's ability to allow themselves to escape into these stories. They've quite literally been brainwashed into thinking that every classic story needs to be updated to reflect their modern ideologies. And in reality, that's just not the case, because if you want to make a successful show like the original Game of Thrones, you want to appeal to everyone, not just one group of people.
I'd buy that for $1.
If you want a fantasy world to exist where every character is safe from ridicule and persecution, then you have my blessing. Please go create that IP right now. Because we all know that once the creators of House of the Dragon inevitably bend the knee to this type of thinking and try to rectify these problematic themes, that the people who are currently complaining right now will ultimately lose interest and move on to the next property that they can bitch, moan, and complain about.
Let's see what we can fuck with next.
And what are we going to be left with? An IP that's been altered so much that it's practically unrecognizable now. And those die-hard fans that supported you unconditionally will probably have checked out by then. And let's face it, Game of Thrones can't handle too much more disappointment. Right now, the IP is currently operating on a surprising amount of good faith, as well as decent word of mouth. I mean, it's the most popular show on TV right now, and it pretty much deserves it. If HBO is smart, they will not allow this situation to be fucked up for a second time by people who do not care about this property as much as the die-hard fans do.
Man, I'm tired of being right.
Y'all be cool. Right on.